An art historian's take on Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Today we're going to take a look at the Naxion Sphinx. Now, by saying the word Sphinx, you might start to call to mind different images from ancient Egypt, like say the Great Sphinx of Giza. But we should realize that ancient Greece and ancient Egypt actually have two different traditions when it comes to what sphinxes are. Egyptian sphinxes tend to be symbols of power and protection and are often associated with the pharaoh. They tend to be male, although we do have examples of female sphinxes. For example, the female pharaoh Hatshepsut is depicted as a sphinx. But in the Greek tradition, the sphinx is almost solely female and is associated with something menacing. Maybe the most famous story of a sphinx in the Greek tradition comes from the story of Oedipus the king. The riddle-asking sphinx is described as a plague on the city of Thebes, and anyone who could not answer the riddle was sent to their doom. So while the Sphinx was a fearsome creature in the Greek tradition, it was also a really popular art subject. Now, the Naxion Sphinx is actually thought to be amongst one of the earliest monuments erected at Delphi. Given how well known Delphi is today, and how popular we know it was in the classical period, it's a little surprising to find out that the Sanctuary of Delphi didn't develop until much later than you would actually expect. Now, there is archaeological evidence that tells us this site was in use for many centuries, but any sort of meaningful monuments, artworks, and architecture relating to the cult of Apollo is only really pretty sparing, and only really starts to appear around the 6th century. Not even the literary sources help us very much, as we're told that the older sanctuaries were made out of things like laurel branches, or beeswax and feathers. I mean, what are we supposed to do with that? However, when the monuments do start to appear, we can already see how far Delphi's reach was. The Naxion Sphinx is a great example, as this was dedicated by the people of Naxos. Now, Naxos was one of the wealthier and more prosperous of the Cycladic islands during this period, and we can even visit this island in the game. The developers did a really great job by including a sculpture workshop near the port. This is a really great detail, as it kind of shows the evidence that the Naxians were making a lot of sculptures, and that they were taking their sculptures all over the Greek world and dedicating them at different sanctuaries and important locations. These dedications do tend to show off just how wealthy and well-connected the Naxians were. So if we take a look at our Sphinx, this Sphinx is made out of Naxian marble, and it was transported all the way from Naxos to Delphi, taken all the way up the mountain to be put in its final location. Now, the Naxian Sphinx topped a tall Ionic column, and the column and Sphinx together stood over 12 meters tall. This really ensured that everyone around Delphi would be able to see this dedication. Now, this work is made in the archaic style, which we can see in the rigidity of the body and also the blocky shape of the face. On the face, there's the inclusion of the archaic smile. Now, the archaic smile is characterized by the odd puckering at the corner of the mouth. The proportions of the head, bust, arms, wings, and body also seem to be a little bit awkward, unlike, say, the later classical age, where perfect proportions were favored. The last thing I want to talk about is an inscription that was added to the sculpture centuries later. The inscription on the base was added about 328 to 327 BC, and it reaffirms the Naxion's relationship to the oracle. Now, the oracle only gives prophecies 9 days a year, so how do you make sure you get to meet with her? Well, first is the local Delphinians, as she was their prophetess, and then it is the Greek cities who are part of the Delphic Supreme Governing Council. After those groups get to go, it's those who have special rights who get to meet with the oracle. Oftentimes, these rights are only granted to cities that have made major financial contributions to the sanctuary. So having that special privilege is really important. After those with special rights, then you get the rest of the Greeks, and then after the Greeks, the non-Greeks can meet with the prophetess as well. So your money, gifts, and dedications at Delphi really do matter when it comes to your actual status within the city. So I hope you all can see that a sculpture, it might not look as impressive as, say, a war monument or a treasury, can actually tell us a tremendous amount about how this city developed and how it worked. Now, if you're interested in more information about the development of Delphi, Dr. Michael Scott wrote a great book called Delphi, A History of the Center of the Ancient World, and also did a BBC show on Delphi as well. All right, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys next week.